And away we go, episode 1198 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Thursday, November 13th, 2025, and in a 2025 NFL regular season in which the 3-7 Washington Commanders have had 4 primetime games, all losses, it is nice to have the team in Madrid, Spain for this game against the 3-7 Miami Dolphins this Sunday morning at 9:30. The time in Spain is 6 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time, and so everything for the Commanders while they're in Spain is happening super early by normal standards. For example, head coach Dan Quinn did a pre-practice press conference on Wednesday in the 5 a.m. Eastern hour. And the team is practicing at the team facility for one of the most famous teams in the world, the soccer club Real Madrid CF. CF is in Club de Football. This is the first NFL regular season game in Spain ever. Hello and welcome to this Thursday installment of the Al Galdi podcast, a podcast in which we talk Commanders on every episode, no matter the time of year and no matter the record of our team. Next segment, a breakdown of the Commanders' initial injury report for this game against the Dolphins and discussion of a variety of topics addressed by Dan Quinn during that pre-practice press conference early Wednesday morning, including what changes with him now being both head coach and defensive coordinator, what he told interior defensive lineman Daron Payne of him getting suspended by the NFL for 1 game without pay for throwing a punch at Detroit Lions receiver Amon-Ra St. during the 44-22 loss to the Lions at Northwest Stadium this past Sunday, and whether the Commanders' problems are more foundational or just about execution. And then the following segment, the conversation with Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack on 3 notable items. A, what's going on with receiver Terry McLaurin? B, whether quarterback Jayden Daniels should/will play again this season? And C, how this season is impacting the likelihood of Kliff Kingsbury this offseason leaving his job as Commanders offensive coordinator for a head coaching job. And also on the show, I'll talk Washington Wizards, Georgetown basketball, and Virginia Tech basketball. The Wizards, they on Wednesday night lost their 10th consecutive game, a 135-112 loss at the Houston Rockets. I'll react to the game and also to news on former Wizard Bradley Beal. His season already is done. The Hoyas, they on Wednesday evening beat Binghamton 83-70 at Capital One Arena. And the Hokies, they on Wednesday night routed St. Joseph's 94-59 at Castle Coliseum in Blacksburg, Virginia. Before we get to some feedback, the Washington Nationals, they on Wednesday morning announced that the introductory press conference for their new manager, Blake Butera, will take place in the press conference room at Nationals Park this Monday afternoon, November 17th at 1:30. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Feedback on the Commanders, email from Connor, writes Connor, "Hi Al, I'm a big fan of the podcast, lost in the embarrassment of this Commander season and the politics of the President Trump appearance at Sunday's game was an interesting uniform tidbit that few are talking about. Josh Harris presented President Trump with a number 47 jersey, and I noticed that rather than a primary Commander's uniform, this was more similar to a Redskins jersey, specifically the Super Bowl era edition. This could very well be a moot point. However, I think this also contributes to the growing feeling of the organization moving away from the hideous 2.2.22 era and back to the look and feel of old, perhaps as soon as this offseason. What say you? Keep up the great work amidst this disappointing season. Thank you for the email, Connor. Excellent point. Commanders managing partner Josh Harris this past Sunday did present President Donald Trump with a number 47 Commanders jersey, not in honor of all-time great Redskins tight end Chris Cooley, but in honor of Trump being in the midst of the 47th presidential term in the history of this country. And yes, the jersey is along the lines of the team's Redskins-like alternate uniform, not a standard Commanders uniform. The hope that I know so many of you have is that the Commanders, as soon as next season, move to having that Redskins-like uniform as the team's number 1 uniform, and this very well may be a sign that is happening. Now, there is also this. Trump has said that he wants the Commanders to go back to being the Redskins, so I suppose it is possible that Harris gave Trump a Redskins-like Commanders jersey because of Trump's affinity for the team being the Redskins, but it absolutely could be the case that this is a sign that the team is moving toward having the Redskins-like uniform as the team's number 1 uniform. Email from Steven. Right, Steven? Al, just a horrible Sunday for every aspect of the brand, the play, the stadium, the owner, the NFL, Fox, barely watchable on all aspects. I have so much loyalty to the memories this organization has given me and my family. I am seriously lost about what I am watching or whom I am being loyal to. Thank you for the email, Steven. You know, Trump became the first sitting president to attend an NFL regular season game since Jimmy Carter in 1978. That is remarkable. Neither Ronald Reagan, nor George H.W. Bush, nor Bill Clinton, nor George W. Bush, nor Barack Obama, nor Trump during his first term as president, nor Joe Biden ever attended an NFL regular season game in terms of each guy's tenure as president. Reagan was president January 1981 to January 1989. Reagan was president right during the heart of the Redskins' glory days, right? You would have thought that he might have attended a Skins regular season game at RFK Stadium during that stretch, but no. Email from Brian Young. Writes Brian, hey Al, during the game on Sunday, Bobby Wagner was looking to the sideline with his arms up as if to say, hey, what's the play? Then the snap happened. He dropped into coverage, and of course, Detroit took another 18 yards. He shrugged his shoulders, what looked to me like he was just done. That screams coaching. Witt may have always just been a coattail rider. Something to think about. Thank you for the email, Brian. That is interesting. I do not think that the Commanders' defense being so bad is all on Joe Witt Jr., but a snapshot like what Brian just provided, the horrible communication in the secondary, the frequency with which opposing pass catchers have been screaming wide open, the fact that Dan Quinn saw fit to demote Witt and take over as the team's defensive coordinator, all of that suggests that Witt has not exactly done some bang-up job. Email from Jimmy in Connecticut. Writes Jimmy, Tom Loverro had an all-time one-liner when the Redskins cut DJ Swearinger Christmas 2018 after publicly ripping Greg Minuski. If they really wanted to punish Swearinger, they should have made him stay. Same can be said for Joe Witt. Don't let him off the hook right before the Hard Knocks cameras show up. We deserve to see just how big of a mess this really is. Keep up the good work, Al. Thank you for the email, Jimmy. Don't you think that Joe Witt, deep down inside, is rooting for the Commanders' defense to continue to be bad? I mean, let's just be honest here, right? Doesn't he have to be rooting for the Commanders' defense to continue to be bad? I mean, if Dan Quinn, as the team's defensive coordinator, gets the defense to be appreciably better, that makes Witt look bad, really bad. He's as good as gone this offseason anyway. I would think that he, deep down inside, is rooting for the Commanders' defense to continue to be bad, not because he hates Quinn or the players, but just because the defense continuing to be bad under Quinn would make Witt look better. There's no denying that. Email from Ken in Washington County, Maryland. Writes Ken, Al, I'm a casual pro football fan, not a pseudo-guru. I couldn't tell the difference between a zone pass defense and a no-passing zone on the highway. I'm not a PFF aficionado. The All-22 sounds like a porn flick to me. I root more for the Ravens and Steelers than the Redskins. But it's clear to me that the Commies' defense reeks. The stench comes down from the air onto my satellite dish and invades my house with the smell. The defense is stink on toast. What to do about the defense? Way beyond my pay grade, but I do know a necessary process. Adam Peters and Dan Quinn need to assemble a construction inspector, some architects and engineers, and examine the structure from the foundation to the roof. Start now, as the season is lost. Thank you for the email, Ken. A lot to sort through with that email. Yes, everything about the Commanders' defense should be inspected and evaluated. How is Ken someone who roots for both the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers? Two bitter rivals. I find that fascinating. And yes, the All-22 is, in a lot of ways, football porn. So Ken was onto something with his observation. But, you know, all of this talk about how bad the Commanders' defense is and Trump having been at the game on Sunday in honor of Veterans Day, which was this past Tuesday, and the Commanders now being in a foreign country in Spain, has gotten me to thinking about something. Thank goodness that our country's military is not the Commanders' defense, okay? Thank goodness that the United States of America has a military that is not the Commanders' defense. Imagine if our country's military was the Commanders' defense, all right? we'd all be speaking Russian right now, okay? We'd all be speaking Russian. This podcast would be in Russian. My guest on this installment of the podcast would be Amon-Ra St. Catering by Uptown. It provides catering to perfection. Whatever event you're planning, a wedding, a holiday party, whatever, visit cateringbyuptown.com. Mention that Al Galdi sent you and see what Catering by Uptown can do for you. Catering by Uptown provides both great service and a great price. Catering by Uptown is a family business. It's run by the Pereiras, who are great Commanders fans and loyal supporters of this podcast. Catering by Uptown specializes in handling everything so that you don't have to. Catering by Uptown understands that special events deserve to be celebrated in style and thus takes care of every detail so that you can enjoy your event. Great service, amazing cuisine, and reliability are the foundation of what makes Catering by Uptown one of the most referred caterers throughout Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Northern Virginia. And know this, if you go to cateringbyuptown.com and click on venues, you can set up your own personal tour of one of Catering by Uptown's premier venues, including outstanding waterfront venues. Catering by Uptown offers the ability to coordinate services at over 100 of the best reception halls, vineyards, farms, historic homes, event venues, banquet facilities, and wedding venues in the area. Visit cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. That's cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. The Washington Commanders early Wednesday morning announced having opened the 21-day practice window for safety Will Harris in an instance of, believe it or not, good injury news for the team this season. Harris has been on the reserve/injured list since September 22nd. This due to a fractured fibula that he suffered in the Commanders' 41-24 win over the Las Vegas Raiders at Northwest Stadium on September 21st. Will he play in the Commanders game against the Miami Dolphins in Spain this Sunday morning at 9:30? Well, he for Wednesday morning's practice was a limited participant. 5 Commanders defensive players were on the team's injury report for Wednesday morning's practice. We just talked about Will Harris. Safety Quan Martin was a limited participant in practice due to a shoulder ailment. Linebacker Frankie Louvu was a limited participant in practice due to a shoulder ailment. Linebacker Bobby Wagner was a full participant in practice but was on the injury report due to a thumb issue. And linebacker Ale Cajo did not practice. He did not make the trip to Spain. He already has been declared out for this game against the Dolphins due to a concussion. He suffered that in covering the opening kickoff of the second half in the 44-22 loss to the Detroit Lions at Northwest Stadium this past Sunday. 6 Commanders offensive players were on the team's injury report for Wednesday morning's practice. Quarterback Jayden Daniels did not practice. He did not make the trip to Spain. He already has been declared out for this game against the Dolphins due to his dislocated left elbow. Receiver Treylon Burks did not practice. He did not make the trip to Spain. He already has been declared out for the game against the Dolphins due to a finger injury. Receiver Terry McLaurin did not practice due to his re-injured quadriceps. Much more on him next segment. Running back Chris Rodriguez Jr. was a full participant in practice. Good news there. He in the loss to the Lions started, but during the game dealt with a shoulder injury. He had 6 carries for 16 yards and a touchdown and no targets and playing on 33% of the Commanders' offensive snaps. And left tackle Laramie Tunsil and tight end Zach Ertz did not practice, but due to rest. By the way, each of those guys played well in the loss to the Lions. Laramie Tunsil played on 94% of the Commanders' offensive snaps. He for the game had an overall grade per Pro Football Focus of 83.6. Zach Ertz had 4 receptions for 54 yards on 5 targets and playing on 81% of the Commanders' offensive snaps. He for the game had an overall grade per Pro Football Focus of 77.4. Your list of notable Commanders players on the reserve/injured list: receivers Noah Brown and Luke McCaffrey, running back Austin Eckler, edge defenders Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise Jr., and Javonte Jean-Baptiste, cornerbacks Marshawn Lattimore and Trey Amos, and safety Will Harris. So we this week have spent time discussing what Commanders quarterback Marcus Mariota meant when he, during his postgame press conference this past Sunday night, said, quote, "I don't think we are who we think we are," end quote.
At the end of the day, in order to get things going in the right direction, you have to be transparent, you have to be honest. And I don't think we are who we think we are.
Yeah, there it was. Quote, "I don't think we are who we think we are," end quote. Marcus Mariota did a post-practice press conference on Wednesday morning as he is set to be the Commanders' starting quarterback for the 5th time in 11 games this regular season. The last exchange of the presser was this between Commanders insider Tom Schad of the Washington Post and Mariota.
Marcus, I wanted to circle back on something you said after the game. It was something to the effect of, I don't think we are who we think we are, or something. Could you unpack that for us? What did you mean by that?
Well, when it comes down to it, when you're not playing to the standard that we established back in camp, it's important that guys hold that standard and hold the rest of the team up to that standard. And I mean, yeah, we're 3-7, and that's not anywhere near where we want to be. And so looking back on it, it's not from a lack of effort. I do think that there's opportunities for us to grow in little things, in little details. But we talked about it on Monday as an offense, like guys are playing hard. And when you're sitting at 3-7, that's not always the case across the league. And so I think what that shows is that our guys care and they want to make this right. And at the end of the day, how we do that is just finding ways to execute better, communicating maybe some of the game plan things that we don't like or things that we do like, and trying to put our best foot forward so that in the end we win.
All right, so some perspective from Marcus Mariota on what he meant when he said, quote, "I don't think we are who we think we are," end quote. That is not a quote that makes the team look good, but it is important to remember that coaches and players, when doing post-game press conferences, are coming off the emotional highs and lows of an NFL game and aren't like reading from a script, so there should be some leeway on what people say and how they say what they say. Meantime, Commanders head coach Dan Quinn, he early Wednesday morning did a pre-practice press conference. He ended it by giving us some Spanish, as in vamos.
Vamos.
Yes, vamos, as in let's go. But a notable topic at the Dan Quinn pre-practice presser early Wednesday morning was him now being the Commanders' defensive coordinator. Quinn, during his day after the game press conference on Monday afternoon, made the announcement that he had demoted Joe Witt Jr. and had taken over as the team's defensive coordinator. During Quinn's pre-practice presser early Wednesday morning, had this exchange between Commanders insider Nicky Jhabvala of The Athletic and Dan Quinn.
How's your week changed since taking over defensive coordinator role? I mean, how much has just your day-to-day changed?
It's more in the preparation phase, Nikki, going to that. And so obviously I'm always involved with the defense, but team meetings and special teams and those are staying the same. But just in and out of the practices, and it's been a big collaboration so far. So all is good.
So you think about it, the three main jobs of an NFL defensive coordinator during the regular season are A, coaching guys up during practice, B, putting together a game plan for the upcoming game, and C, calling defensive alignments / tactics or plays during the game. To what extent did Joe Witt falter in all three of these areas to where Dan Quinn can make improvements? Or is the horrendous defense just mostly about the defense having been torn apart by injury and the defensive roster just not being that good to begin with? I mean, when you add to the mix that interior defensive lineman Daron Payne for this game against the Dolphins will be serving a 1-game suspension without pay for throwing the punch at Lions receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown this past Sunday. The Commanders for this game against the Dolphins will be without perhaps as many as 6 defensive starters due to injury / suspension. Payne, edge defenders Dorrance Armstrong and Dietrich Wise Jr., cornerbacks Marshawn Lattimore and Trey Amos, and safety Will Harris. Though as mentioned earlier, he potentially could play against the Dolphins. So we early Wednesday morning had this exchange between Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN and Dan Quinn.
The challenges of these changes when you have a lot of guys out and there's been inconsistency with that, what is the challenge there for you with that, and can you get it to the level with all these changes and et cetera?
I think you can. You want the continuity. That's what you're talking about also, John. So on offense, in the passing game, the alignments, the route depths, just the different timing with different players and how that can go. Defensively, you want to make sure, who's into these spots, that their communication with the other players can get heightened and do that quickly and do it fast. And that's what we intend to do.
Okay, what about Dan Quinn on game day as both the head coach and defensive coordinator? We early Wednesday morning had this exchange between Mitch Tischler of Monumental Sports Network and Dan Quinn.
Hey, Dan, taking on some of the defensive responsibilities, will somebody help out with kind of the head coaching responsibilities in terms of, play clock and all the different things that you're responsible for on game day?
Yeah, on game day, Dave Gardy's one that helps me quite a bit, and Brian Johnson also does as well. So I'll lean in on Brian as well. So those are the two that can assist me into that space.
So Brian Johnson and Dave Gardy. Brian Johnson is the Commander's assistant head coach / offensive pass game coordinator. Dave Gardy is the Commander's senior vice president of football initiatives. I mentioned the suspension of Daron Payne. We do now have some more context on what the heck happened. Payne, in an Instagram post on Tuesday, had video of Amon-Ra St. Brown clearly throwing a punch at Payne a few plays prior to Payne throwing a punch at St. Brown. No penalty or punishment for St. Brown, despite him throwing that punch right in front of an official. That is ridiculous, but that does not excuse Payne for what he did. He needs to be smarter than that. Him putting himself in position to be ejected and suspended is inexcusable, especially considering that he was, remember, a captain for this game. The Commanders' defense in the second quarter of the loss to the Lions became unhinged. It was disturbing to see that. We had what happened with Payne. Interior defensive lineman Javon Kinlaw, he committed a 5-yard defensive offside penalty, after which he inexplicably was talking trash to Lions quarterback Jared Goff, and Kinlaw, after a Lions 2-point conversion, committed a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that was enforced between downs as he made contact with an official's hat. And safety Quan Martin committed a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on a 22-yard field goal by kicker Jake Bates with 11 seconds left in the second quarter. We early Wednesday morning had this exchange between WUSA 9 sports anchor Chick Hernandez and Dan Quinn.
You talked about times like now, considering what's happened the last couple of weeks and the frustration that a lot of players showed in that game.
Sure.
Daron, Quan.
Yep.
Did you feel as the head coach you had to address that frustration level with certain players or the entire team?
With the entire team first, and it was directly at the half. And to make sure we don't, those things you don't want to wait, Chick. You want to hit it now. You want to get right to it. And having the chance to address it right off the bat, like, you clench the fist, you're upset, it's emotional, all that. We feel it too, as coaches, when you're not hitting your marks and you get frustration, but it's also what's the techniques that we need to do to move on to the next. And a lot of that will come back to our focus. What are things we can control? Expect that it's going to feel off and feel shitty when it's not going your way. And so how do we turn ourselves into the next space, into the next moment? And that's what we work on. So our mental game, that's where we try to dig in on that.
And the mental game in the loss to the Lions was not good. The best question that was asked during the Dan Quinn pre-practice press conference early Wednesday morning was via this exchange between Barry Zverluga, columnist for the Washington Post, and Dan Quinn.
Dan, as you look at the last month or so and figure out everything that has not gone the right way, do you feel like there are foundational problems in roster and personnel, or is it really just execution?
Yeah, I really feel it's execution. That's where I do feel that way, Barry. And the reason why, I've seen where it hits good and I've seen where it doesn't. So had we not seen where we could hit the marks, I'd feel otherwise. So that's what we're digging in hard on. To have this time together, here on this trip, to do those things, that's important for us. But that's what I've been digging in the hardest, man. We want all this dog competing, but man, we want it with the discipline to get it right as well.
So Dan Quinn right there gave the answer that he had to give, that the Commanders' problems are more about execution than the problems are about the roster. Him saying that the problems are more about the roster would have caused all kinds of problems. I think that we all understand that both the roster and the execution have been problems this season. What's tricky is how much has each been a problem. Like, if we are doing a blame pie, what percent goes to the players not being good enough, and that would include the injuries, versus what percent goes to the play of the players not being good enough, and that would include coaching. Hey, please consider subscribing to the podcast if you're not already doing that. Subscribing to the podcast costs nothing. Make sure that you never miss an episode and helps out the podcast a lot. And if you are already subscribing, thank you. During Washington Commanders head coach Dan Quinn's pre-practice press conference early Wednesday morning, got some good news on receiver Terry McLaurin. He is making progress. McLaurin, for the 44-22 loss to the Detroit Lions at Northwest Stadium this past Sunday, was inactive for a second consecutive game. This due to a quadriceps that he re-injured in the Commanders' 28-7 loss at the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football on October 27th. And McLaurin in that game returned from a 4-game absence caused by the quadriceps injury, which he suffered in the Commanders' 41-24 win over the Las Vegas Raiders at Northwest Stadium on September 21st. He will not play in this game against the Miami Dolphins in Spain this Sunday morning at 9:30, so he is set to be out for the 7th time in 8 games. But he did make the trip to Spain, and there's a reason for that. We early Wednesday morning had this exchange between Commanders insider J.P. Finley of NBC4 and Dan Quinn.
Dan, sorry we didn't ask this Monday, but what is the latest with Terry? I know you said he's not going to play this week, but hasn't played in a couple weeks.
Yes.
IR, more medical opinions. Where's he at?
Yeah, so he's here, and he'll do some of the movement, and begin like the on-field portions of the rehab. So the first couple weeks he was not able to do that, and so now he's able to begin some of the on-field portions of the rehab, and so that'll take the build-up time to do that, but we're glad he's here taking the next step on the on-field side. So sometimes these injuries take longer than you want, and they're not predictable to say it's going to be this set time, and so we're just going to continue to say, okay, next step, next step, next step. And so the on-field portion is a good sign that, okay, we can now take the next steps.
Okay, so Terry McLaurin is beginning the on-field portion of his rehab in what has been quite the saga. What a strange, bizarre, disjointed last 4 months for Terry McLaurin, starting with him on July 15th in that 32-plus minute session with reporters sounding off on his frustration with the Commanders and contract extension talks. We had the training camp holdout. We had the training camp hold in. We had him signing a contract extension that, once the true details emerged, was revealed to be very much a team-friendly extension and not the win that a lot of people, fans and media members, initially thought it was for McLaurin. We had McLaurin over the Commanders' first 2 games of this regular season having just 7 receptions for just 75 yards and no touchdowns on 13 targets. We had him getting injured on a 56-yard reception in that win over the Raiders, so a great play with a terrible result. We had him having disappeared while recovering from the quadriceps injury, with which there was some mystery. If you remember that, there has been talk that this is a hip flexor injury. We have not been told the exact nature of the injury. And then he re-injured the quad. Just a strange, bizarre, disjointed last 4 months for Terry McLaurin. There's also this. He has not been especially visible during those games that he has missed, and that has led to anger from fans at McLaurin for not being at the games. Now, the mom of Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels, Regina Jackson, she on Tuesday afternoon in a post on X made it clear that McLaurin has been at games. At lovely Ms. Jackson on X, at lovely MZ Jackson on X. Quote, when Jayden got hurt, he, as in McLaurin, was in the locker room and he was there at the Lions game, end quote. So Regina Jackson, a.k.a. Mama Daniels, saying that McLaurin was at the 38-14 loss to the Seattle Seahawks at Northwest Stadium on Sunday Night Football on November 2nd and was at the loss to the Lions. I think it is important to get that out there because I have seen a lot of fans ripping McLaurin for not being at these games. It turns out that criticism has been unfair. But what especially stands out to me is this willingness now for fans to criticize McLaurin. There is a lot of frustration with him having missed so much time this season. There has been speculation about exactly why he has missed so much time. this season. And so we welcome back to the Al Galdi podcast Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack. You could read his work at lastmanstanding.substack.com. He also is the host of the Last Man Standing podcast. You can follow Ben on X at Ben Standig. Ben joined us on Wednesday's show, episode 1197, for a deep dive on how and why the Commanders' 2025 season has gone wrong, and Ben is back with us now. So, regarding Terry McLaurin, the truth matters. He has been at least the last 2 games. But what's also true is that he, during this time with injury, seemingly has disappeared when it comes to talking to reporters or even being around you guys. This has been a big part of the mystery with his situation. What can you tell us about the extent to which McLaurin has been around when you guys have been around?
We have not seen him in the locker room when he had the first round of the injury, nor this round. Now, not all injured players are around. I mean, depending on what their injury is, they could be elsewhere. Like I know, like Will Harris, for example, when he got hurt, I think he's from California, or he went to see a medical expert who was out in California. He was away for a bit, but now he's been back the last couple of weeks, and he's been in the locker room like when we're in there. And he's been hurt, and Sam Cosmi was kind of around prior to getting pulled off of the PUP list. Haven't seen Terry. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but if you're asking, has he been around? I haven't seen him. Clearly, he's somewhere in the building, but I haven't seen him. So to what degree he's been around with them, it's hard to say.
Why do you think that Terry McLaurin, during this time being out with injury, hasn't been more visible and has barely talked to reporters?
Well, when they're hurt, they kind of can't talk. I mean, they could talk casual bullshit. Sorry, don't mean to curse on your family-friendly podcast. But they don't have to. I mean, that's like the other day, Dietrich Wise was in there. He's walking around with a crutch. Obviously he had a significant injury, and he was BSing with me. I don't even know him that well, but he was making some joke, and then we started to talk. And then he was like, hey, just to be clear, I can't really talk on the record about anything. So there are some of those kinds of elements. He can't, he could, but we just haven't seen him. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not trying to say that there is any behind the scenes stuff, because I don't know. If I did, I would report it. But that to me is one thing I have wondered, and have wondered it from the jump, is to what degree is there any lingering effects of the contract talks? And I don't know. From what even when he came back, and then got hurt again, the way he was talking, he was like, yeah, I needed to make sure that I was right. Obviously, it wouldn't be good for the team if I wasn't. But it felt unusual because typically you hear, I feel like you would have heard him say in previous times, I got to do whatever I can to get out there to help the team, versus I need to make sure that I'm really ready to go. And then he has the injury, and now we haven't seen him, and now it's been, it's at least 3 more games that he will have missed. So, again, Terry's been a stand-up guy his whole time here. There's no reason to think that anything is, he's pulling a fast one, but something's often, something smells rotten in Denmark, right, or whatever. So something feels off. Again, I'm not saying it's him or anything, but what you're asking about, could there be some sort of an expose later? That's at least something you would have to consider as a potential topic as to what's gone wrong here.
Yeah, so let's just say what people have been thinking, if not saying. A theory has been that Terry McLaurin is mad about the contract extension talks having been contentious, and is mad about the team-friendly extension that he ultimately signed, and thus has slow-played coming back from injury this season. But there are 2 things about this theory that need to be made clear. A, this is a theory for which there is little, if any, evidence. B, this is a theory that goes against everything that we have known about Terry McLaurin. Stand-up guy, very diligent, ultra-reliable. So personally, I need to see and hear a lot more before I buy into the theory. But I did want to discuss that with you, because a lot of people have been not so much talking about this, but hinting at this and dancing around this. And I was like, hey, let's just talk about this. Be open about this while also being fact-based about this. All right. Jayden Daniels, he for this game against the Dolphins is set to be out for a second consecutive game due to a dislocated left elbow and is set to be out for a fifth time in 11 games for the Commanders this regular season. What do you think that General Manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn are thinking about whether Daniels plays again this season?
I mean, I've been of two minds of this. The Jewish mother in me, because I had one. Be very cautious. Don't get out of my sight. Don't leave the house. Says to me, I don't know, 3 injuries. Whatever the reason, it's not working right. Maybe he needs to go and work with somebody on how to fall or how to do some different exercises, things like that. I don't know. Maybe it's bad luck, but they keep happening. But on the other hand, if they really say, hey, you're clear, not you're playing through something, but you're clear to go, and the last 4 games of the year are all against division opponents, even if the season is completely doesn't mean anything, they're out of the playoffs, all that stuff. Those games do have some meaning, even if it's just to say, hey, let's see how we are head to head against the other teams in our division at the end of the year. Maybe, hypothetically, you could go in there, you win some of those games, maybe you beat the Eagles at one of the two, and you're feeling like, hey, despite all the problems, despite all the stuff, we came in at the end of the year and beat a team that had something to play for. Maybe there's value in that, not to mention just giving, I'm not questioning if Jayden's lost any confidence, but obviously this isn't the year that anybody imagined. So to sort of just get some positives out there, maybe even just for the fans to a degree, I wouldn't make choices based on that, but obviously people have become pretty disillusioned. I thought because so much was happening on Sunday, the fact that lower bowl was very loaded with Detroit fans, so clearly Washington fans sold tickets, I guess. That was a pretty alarming sign. It then became less so once they got destroyed in the game and a certain person showed up in the stadium and grabbed a lot of attention. But yeah, I mean, there's reasons to do it, but I would imagine on some level, if they're given the go-ahead, that they would use him. Now, if it gets to 2 weeks or left, I don't know. Maybe there becomes a point where it's not worth it. But if there's say a month left, maybe that I would think they would say, let's put him out there.
We're talking with Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack. A lot of people went into this season assuming that it would be Kliff Kingsbury's final season as Commanders offensive coordinator. He last offseason took himself out of the running for NFL head coaching jobs. The chance of him doing that for a second consecutive offseason has seemed unlikely, and there now are a lot of big-time head coaching openings in college football. However, the Commanders are having the season that they're having. Now, I think that Kingsbury overall is doing a good job this season, considering that the offense has been hammered by injury. I mean, the Commanders for this regular season through Week 10 are number 13 in the NFL in total offense in terms of expected points added per play per RBSDM.com, upper half of the NFL. The passing offense in the loss to the Lions this past Sunday actually was quite good. What's your sense of where we are right now regarding the likelihood of Kingsbury this offseason leaving the Commanders for a head coaching job either in the NFL or college?
I don't have any true sense because it's probably it's too early because just for everything involved, even the colleges with all these openings, they're waiting to see how the college season plays out before they determine, who is the hot candidates. But to that end, I'm a believer that it shouldn't be the hot candidate who gets hired. I mean, maybe sometimes, but it should be whoever is the best coach. The hot thing could be relative to all kinds of variables, just like struggles could have nothing to do with necessarily the coordinator. In this case, it could be other factors. I think I agree with you for the most part, other than the Chiefs game and there were a couple games where the offenses has not been there. But again, we know they've had tons of injuries. But in general, I think they've done a pretty reasonable job. Like you said, this last game, I mean, Mariota was fine. I mean, they put up 22 points. Maybe not good enough to win most games, but certainly good enough to be competitive. And I feel like they've been that way most of the year, despite losing your number one running back. You barely have had your number one receiver much of this year. There are a lot of changes on the offensive line, et cetera. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, clearly he can't be going in with the same level of hotness as he did last year. the fact that the college part is interesting to me. I don't know that he wants to go back to college. He's done that before, and I get the sense obviously college is a disaster these days with NIL and all that and the recruiting, but they pay a lot of money last time I checked, and he's the kind of a guy who, he's a sexy name. He's obviously, the resume includes helping Jayden Daniels and Patrick Mahomes in college. That's pretty good. He's the kind of guy that will get you a lot of attention. I'm not saying like Maryland, but like, for example, if you said to me, hey, Maryland, if you're going to move on from Michael Oxley, I would knock on the Kliff Kingsbury door. I don't think he would go there by any stretch of the imagination, but like some schools may be like, hey, we need attention. We can't just be getting by, we're getting overshadowed by everybody in our conference or whatever. So I think he could probably get some feelers out there. Here's what I wonder. Let me put this back to you. As it stands right now, would it be that big of a deal if he left?
Kliff Kingsbury this offseason leaving the Commanders would not be good. My preference is that he does not leave, but would him leaving be that big of a deal? Well, I guess I'd look at it like this. Could the Commanders overcome him leaving? Yes, especially considering that they have this succession plan for offensive coordinator with these well-regarded offensive assistants beneath Kingsbury. And, maybe the team would go with an external hire, like, say, Mike McDaniel, if he gets fired as Dolphins head coach.
Well, certainly people would want to be around Jayden, right? I mean, that's the number one deal. You won't have an issue like, there are some places where like, no quarterback, they're losing team. I don't want to go there. Like, the Bengals can overcome the ownership that everybody hates because Joe Burrow is pretty good. Whereas like, say the Saints, they're not changing their coach per se, but like, do they have a quarterback? Who knows? So yeah, I think from that perspective, but that's the part that's interesting is like how much of what has happened this year while giving Kingsbury credit for keeping the offense's head above water, does he deserve some questioning for the lack of consistency and upside that we saw a year ago? Again, I don't know that it was his call to have bad receiver depth, but we'll see.
Yes, we will. Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack. Ben, thanks.
Thanks, man.
All right, Nova Fireplace and Stove. It is Northern Virginia's go-to expert for fireplaces. Transform the look and feel of your home and increase its value by visiting Nova Fireplace and Stove in Woodbridge, Virginia, or by visiting novafireplaceandstove.com. And make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you for $25 off any service. Come in and see Nova Fireplace and Stove's stunning displays, including custom fireplace glass doors and stone refacing options that can completely transform the look of your fireplace. From sleek and modern to rustic and cozy, Nova Fireplace and Stove has something for every style. And here's what else Nova Fireplace and Stove offers: gas fireplace service and repair, chimney cleaning and brickwork repair, generator installation, panel replacements and water heater repairs, smoke detectors, security lights, and more. Nova Fireplace and Stove is a family-owned, fully licensed and insured company with over-the-top credentials, gas and electrical master's licenses, a Class A contractor's license, and a long list of 5-star reviews to back all of this up. Every job includes a free in-home estimate, and for listeners of the Al Galdi podcast, Nova Fireplace and Stove is offering $25 off any service. Just mention this ad. Nova Fireplace and Stove only works in Northern Virginia and thus knows the homes, the codes, and the people. Your satisfaction is 100% guaranteed. That's Nova Fireplace and Stove in Woodbridge, Virginia, or novafireplaceandstove.com. And make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you for $25 off any service. Nova Fireplace and Stove, where comfort meets craftsmanship, and your fireplace becomes the heart of your home. The 2026 NBA Draft is the final draft in which our rebuilding and tanking Washington Wizards could convey a first-round pick as part of the John Wall-Russell Westbrook trade of December 2020. The Wizards on December 2nd, 2020, traded Wall and a protected first-round pick to the Houston Rockets for Westbrook. The reported terms of the protected first-round pick: 2023 lottery protected, 2024 top 12 protected, 2025 top 10 protected, 2026 top 8 protected. The pick still is not conveyed, and if the pick is not conveyed by the 2026 NBA draft, then the pick becomes a second-round pick in the 2026 NBA draft and a second-round pick in the 2027 NBA draft. Bottom line, it would behoove our Wizards this season to tank and tank hard in order to not lose that first-round pick in what is a perceived to be loaded 2026 NBA draft. Well, the Wizards on Wednesday night played at the Rockets and did a wonderful job of trying to not lose that pick. A 135-112 loss at the Rockets. The Wizards in the NBA's 2025-2026 regular season fell to 1-11. The Wizards lost their 10th consecutive game. This is their 4th different losing streak of at least 10 games over the last 3 regular seasons. So the Wizards on Wednesday night trailed by at least 11 points for all of the second, third, and fourth quarters. The Wizards' defense was horrendous. They allowed the Rockets to score 135 points, including 81 points in the first half. Allowed the Rockets to go 17 for 35 on threes and 34 for 61 on twos, and allowed the Rockets to have 32 assists versus 12 turnovers. So the Wizards got out-rebounded by the Rockets 53-37, including having just 12 offensive rebounds to the Rockets' 20. 2 bright spots for our Wizards were Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George. Alex Sarr, he in 31 minutes, 58 seconds as a starter, went 2 for 3 on threes, 8 for 12 on twos, and 3 for 5 on free throws. He finished with 25 points, 11 rebounds, including 4 offensive boards and 4 assists versus 2 turnovers. Keyshawn George, he in 35-43 as a starter, had 16 points, 9 assists versus 3 turnovers, 7 rebounds, and 2 steals. He did go just 2 for 6 on threes and just 5 for 11 on twos and did not attempt a free throw. But Sarr and George have been the Wizards' 2 biggest bright spots so far this season. Still no Bilal Coulibaly. He missed a 4th consecutive game due to a left calf contusion. And speaking of injury, how about former Wizard Bradley Beal? He's done for the season. This due to having a fractured left hip. Beal this past July signed with the Los Angeles Clippers as an unrestricted free agent of having been bought out by the Phoenix Suns. Beal, over 2 seasons with the Suns, played in just 106 of a possible 164 regular season games, and now Beal in this regular season for the Clippers ends up playing in just 6 of a possible 82 regular season games. This is Beal's age 32 season. He was injury prone early in his NBA career and now has been injury prone in recent seasons. You wonder how much of an NBA career he has left. You know, the Wizards, in trading Beal to the Suns in June 2023, got pennies on the dollar thanks to his no-trade clause, but he has done nothing since that trade. Next up for the Wizards is a game this weekend, home to the Brooklyn Nets, Sunday evening at 6. And let's talk college basketball. Wins for Georgetown and Virginia Tech on Wednesday evening. Georgetown in the 2025-2026 regular season improved to 3-0 overall with an 83-70 win over Binghamton at Capital One Arena on Wednesday evening. The Hoyas at the half led by just 5 points at 41-36, but then opened the second half with a 19-8 run, one despite going just 4 for 19 on threes. 6'4" Arizona transfer KJ Lewis, he in 32 minutes as a starter, went 1 for 3 on threes, 7 for 11 on twos, and 3 for 3 on free throws. He finished with 20 points and 10 rebounds, including 3 offensive boards. Here was Hoyas head coach Ed Cooley during the opening statement of his postgame press conference on Wednesday night.
Well, I hope we had a little bit more energy in the room, all right? We did win the damn game, right? So definitely just give Binghamton a lot of credit, right? A lot of credit. Hung around. Today, I thought we played for 11 minutes. If the game was 11 minutes, I would have been really, really happy. You never want to be discouraged about, a win is a win is a win. And we want to get better every single time. I thought we got better today for 11 minutes when we came out of the locker room. I thought overall our focus, our attention to detail, we've had back-to-back games where we've given up 25-plus free throws. So our discipline defensively has to improve. But you know what? You're going to have games like this here, and you got to give Binghamton all the credit. I mean, they came in here and they did a really good job. You know, they made some shots, right? They made 7 threes, right? We have not shot the three well, but I did like the way we came out of halftime. So that's what the positive energy will go off of as we prepare for Clemson. We got to flush this one behind us. I did not do a very good job today at all. I think the rotations we have to take a look at. I thought we had some bad lineups on the floor with respect to we hadn't practiced that way, and just trying to get more guys minutes. I think that's the dilemma that we're going to be in. Is with this rotation, we got to take a long look at it as these games are going to get more and more competitive. I don't think the game was ever in doubt at all. I just think our players didn't play with the level of discipline and championship mindset that it's going to take in order for us to continue to grow. So I will take all the blame for this. I have to do an incredible mentorship job and psychology job to get our guys to understand that every game is so important. Every game's important. And this is back-to-back games where we're coming off of playing at home, where we're coming off a big road win, and then coming here and not playing the way that we want to play. But overall, it beats not winning the game because we've been on the other side of this, right? So, very, very happy with the guys with respect to the win, disappointed in our mindset.
All right. I like hearing Ed Cooley talk. He likes to talk. Next up for Georgetown, home to Clemson, Saturday at noon. Meantime, Virginia Tech, in this regular season, improved to 3-0 overall with a 94-59 win over St. Joseph's at Castle Coliseum in Blacksburg, Virginia on Wednesday night. Really good offense for the Hokies. 94 points, 11 for 27 on threes, 27 for 46 on twos, 23 assists versus just 7 turnovers. 6 Tech players each scored at least 11 points. 6'8" West Virginia transfer Amani Hansberry. He in just 22.58 as a starter had 19 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists versus no turnovers and 2 steals. He went just 1 for 4 on threes and just 4 for 6 on free throws, but also 6 for 9 on twos. Next up for Virginia Tech, home to Charlotte, Sunday afternoon at 2. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Friday show, episode 1199. We'll have much more on the Washington Commanders. In-depth preview of their game against the Miami Dolphins in Spain this Sunday morning at 9:30. Also on Friday's show, I'll talk college football week 12 of the 2025 season regarding the FBS teams of the Mid-Atlantic region, including a game on Thursday night. Old Dominion home to Troy, Thursday night at 7:30. How about a Goldilocks pick for you? The consensus line for this game per Action Network as of Wednesday afternoon was the Monarchs minus 11.5. Give me Troy. Also, we have Maryland at Illinois Saturday afternoon at 3:30 as the Terrapins, like the Commanders, are trying to snap a 5-game losing streak. And on Friday's show, we'll discuss the Washington Capitals. The Caps are at the Florida Panthers Thursday night at 7. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and I'll talk to you on Friday.
Vamos.